Hi there, this is Jenny Stilwell and welcome to the 7% Club podcast for the 7% of business owners who break through 2 million in sales and for those on track to join this club. This podcast is to help you upscale. In today's episode of the 7% Club podcast, I'm talking with Nicola Taylor. Nicola is a tax tech entrepreneur on a mission for justice, equity, and a tax system that works for everyone. Co-founder of Tax Traders and Taxi, Nicola is also responsible for the groundbreaking people practices and distinctive culture that Taxi is known for. Taxi is the brainchild of Nicola, who wanted to increase access to tax pooling after becoming dissatisfied with a lack of access to tax pooling solutions for SMEs in the 2021 Auckland lockdown. Hi Nicola, thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Kia ora, Jenny, and hi everyone listening. It's such a treat to be with you.
It's going to be really interesting talking to you because not only has Nicola grown a pretty incredible company from scratch to be a very successful, very large operation, which we'll get into, but also has done amazing things for the people who work with her as well as all her clients. So, you know, certainly being a force for good in the world is something that Nicola lives by. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Success is so much more than the numbers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so before we start talking about today's topic, let's have a chat about your background as a lawyer and how you came to be co-founder of Tax Traders in 2012 and then Taxi. So let's talk about Tax Traders first, and I'm going to let you explain what your company does because it's far too technical for me.
Sure. Well, maybe I'll tell the story first, and then we can get into the technical aspects of what we do. So, we set up Tax Traders on our kitchen table at 165 Grey Street in Onehunga, and at that stage, my background's in law, and I'd also worked in public policy. And together with my co-founder and husband, we had 2 little children and another child about to arrive. Josh, my husband, co-founder guy, was made redundant in a pretty spectacular and difficult way. So we had the opportunity, which is a wonderful and rare opportunity, which redundancy gives you, to consider how do we want our life to look? What is the value that we want to provide to the world? What do we want to do with the gifts and abilities that we've been given? And we felt like the door that was open to us was to set up Tax Traders. And we did that because we saw a real gap in what's known as the tax pooling industry serving SMEs. And I'm going to come back to what tax pooling is in a minute. But just in terms of the story for all you business owners out there, we actually sold our house and at 165 Grey Street, and we put all of that money as well as inheritance and everything else into the new business. We moved house when our littlest one was 6 days old, and we went without income for 18 months. And it's kind of a fun story to tell now, but when you're in that moment and you're like, okay, we still haven't made any money. Okay, we still haven't made any money. Oh, we still haven't made any money. When is this going to start working? It's pretty wild ride.
Well, the fact you did that shows huge belief in what you set out to achieve,
absolutely.
Which is phenomenal. To do that with a 6-day-old child and sell your house and go, right, we're totally committed to this. That is so brave.
Thank you. It's something, isn't it, Jenny? Brave might be the word. There might be some other words. But
let's go with brave.
We'll go with brave. I'm going to accept that. But you're right. And there were 2 core beliefs that we had. And that's what sustained us, because we got down to the last $3,000 to our name. And we were living in a friend's house. We didn't have parents who could financially support us, although they were wonderful, encouraging humans. But there was kind of no backup. And we actually started selling our possessions with the 3 little ones and the business that we just needed to work. And look, it it did, after 18 months, we did land, I guess, our first big transaction in the tax pooling space. So I'll talk about that in a minute. And we were up and going, and it's been a pretty great story of growth since then. But, I will never, ever forget where we came from. I will never forget the days when the phone didn't ring. I will never forget the clients who gave us a go in those early days. I will just never forget those people who supported us. And I don't want to ever forget that for anyone that works here. There's 48 people on the team, but I don't want anyone to forget where we came from and that it was a story of humble beginnings. But I think when you talk about belief, there were two key beliefs that really sustained us during that time. And the first is that the benefits of the New Zealand tax system should be available to every New Zealand business, not just the big corporates. There was a real issue of equity when we looked at the tax landscape for us, that actually all businesses have value. All businesses are contributing. We know that SMEs are the backbone of any given country, which is the same in New Zealand. But why is it only the very big corporates that are accessing these benefits of the tax system? So equity in the tax system was a huge driver for us, and you'll see that bubble up again when we launch Taxi. And the second core belief that really sustained us in that time was that business can be a force for good. That I'd worked in the not-for-profit space as well, and in government adjacent space, and I was really by that stage convinced that business is so well placed to solve complex problems that we are facing. We don't need donors. We know how to make our own money. We also don't need to be elected, so that gives us a level of freedom. And I felt particularly passionate that the workplace should be amazing for people, and if we could just get workplaces right, where they were places of healing and joy and satisfaction. If we could just get that right, boy, we could change a lot of things. So those were the two key sustaining beliefs. And I think if you're going to do a startup like we did, and look, I'm not sure I'm recommending it. I'm not sure I'm recommending the model of sell your house, have 3 tiny babies and go all in. Like that's our journey, and that's been great for us. I'm not sure I'm recommending that. But whatever it is, you have to still have those core sustaining beliefs to kind of see you get through, because it's hard and it's lonely. So that's that. Do you want me to jump to talk about tax pooling itself?
Yeah, I'd love you to.
You sure? Okay.
Just to explain to everyone, yes. I mean, it's very New Zealand specific, and most people listening probably haven't heard of it, and what you're doing is quite amazing. So if you could give us an explanation, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I think anyone, even outside of New Zealand, you can still be thinking, what are the ways that legislation can become software to solve problems for people, right? So in New Zealand, tax pooling was introduced by the Labour government in 2003. So it's a legislative framework. Effectively, in New Zealand, you need to estimate your profit or loss ahead of time, and then you need to pay tax according to what you've estimated that to be. So everybody traditionally got this wrong, and so people were paying too much tax. That extra tax was sitting there not getting a good return, or they weren't paying enough tax, and they were hit with use of money interest or late payment penalties. So there was a lot of pressure from very big corporates that, hey, this provisional tax system is too much of a burden. So the Labour government introduced a system in 2003 where if companies are paying their tax into what's known as a tax pool, we can effectively trade unders and overs, so that if you've paid too much tax, you get a better return on that. If you haven't paid enough tax, we can sell you some tax credits, if you like, and then you won't be hit with late payment penalties and use of money interest. So IRD, that's our tax authority here in New Zealand, they love it because the tax gets paid on time, and Kiwi companies love it because it's just reducing that burden of provisional tax. That's the basics. But it's fair to say that we have really taken that legislative framework, and we have iterated, and we have really been very innovative in how that works. And it's also fair to say that when that legislation was first introduced, and actually when we entered the market in 2012, this was the domain of only big corporates. So the idea was, if you wanted to benefit from the tax pooling system, you really had to be depositing at least $500,000 worth of tax. So you're talking the kind of top of the medium bracket and above there. But last week we got a deposit for $1,100 of tax. So from a ceiling of $500,000 right down to $1,100. We've made, this is what our mission is.
Absolutely.
and you do that through automation and technology and building amazing software. It's the only way you can kind of scale and create opportunities for smaller businesses to participate. So that's kind of tax pooling 101.
Yep.
We can get into taxi whenever you're ready, but that's a little bit about the story.
And so what is the business model? Like how long did it take you to, actually get up and running? I think you said the first 3 years was, just starting to get the business going. But how long did it take to start to get some traction and realise you had a viable business model?
Sure. So with, with tax traders, there was an existing business model. So at that time, we were the 6th tax pooling intermediary or the 7th to enter the market. Now there are only 3 left, but there was an existing, business model in terms of effectively like an arbitrage system. But again, we were very missional focused. So we spent 6 months of research. Firstly, really asking, hey, is there appetite for another player? Mm-hmm. Yes. If so, how are we going to be different from the other players in the market? And importantly, how are we going to ensure that we can make the benefits of this fairly complex legislative system available to more clients? So that was probably, is there an appetite for a competitor? How will we be different? And how will we ensure that we're missional? Those were the 3 questions that we were answering, and that was probably about 6 months. But then it was another year of really hard slog. I'm talking about getting up really early in the morning, kids, kind of not a lot of sleep. But it was another year of hard slog before we even, had a client, even had our first transaction.
And that's really interesting because a lot of people don't do any research at all when they start a business. They just start.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm a bit of a fan of research myself. What did you find, given that there were a number of other players in the market, what were the things that you pulled out from your research that you decided you wanted to use to make your business different? What were those differentiating principles?
I think because it was a new industry, and there weren't multiple players. Probably the biggest thing we discovered was just how cumbersome and difficult it was to work with it. So tax traders, we're working with accountants, and accountants were just saying, it's really hard to get right. It's very time consuming. It's very cumbersome. There's nothing intuitive about it. It's very manual. And so that gives you your business plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's be everything that's not. Let's be intuitive. Let's be, let's make a beautiful user experience. Let's make, let's cut down that workload for accountants. So that was probably the biggest bit of feedback that we really took on board. And again, that married up so beautifully with our missional focus, which is, hey, let's make this available to smaller and smaller clients, because accountants need to be able to do it faster so that they can, accountants charge on their, by their time. So it needs to be worth their while. So we really took that feedback from the market and our desire to use technology to make this available so that accountants would offer this to more and more and smaller of their clients. They just merged so beautifully in what became our business model.
I love that because you surprisingly spoke to existing clients, being the accounting firms or the accountants, and got their feedback.
Yes.
And you listened to their feedback and you implemented it, and here we are.
And we still do, Jenny. We do
it's just invaluable.
Every moment we have our, because we've hired some incredible people. So Becky Butler's on our team, and she introduced what hopefully people are already aware of, but just constant, always on NPS, so Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
So that's always on. But every time we do anything, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a social gathering, whether it's our Women in Tax network, every time we do anything, we are sending that out, requesting feedback, and we are obsessed with that feedback. So people know about NPS scores. If you do, I think when you get ranked, it's like between a 10 and a 0, and then there's some maths that happens that produces your NPS score. If we're getting an 8, and this is all published publicly on a Slack channel, so all 48 of us can see what feedback we're getting from our clients, including feedback like this presenter was amazing, or this presenter wasn't very good, right? This is all very transparent. If we get an 8, we are like panicking. We're like, what? Someone gave us an 8 out of 10? Let's reach out. How can we help them? What did we do wrong? Where do we stuff up? That like obsession with our clients, and not just how they're ranking us, but that research that we're doing at the beginning that we still seek to do, it's unlimited empathy for the people you are serving. You've got to step in their shoes. You've got to understand, who are you? What's important to you? Why would you choose us? What are the barriers to working with us? And just really live in their world.
That's fantastic, because it's so critical, and so many people don't do it. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't think it's important, or they think it's too hard, or they don't do it very well, or they do it and they don't listen. And so I think that NPS research is just invaluable. And I'm so glad you said that, because, I think it's so important too. Let's talk about your business and life philosophy. We've touched on a little bit, but they've got to be interwoven, don't they? If you've got a very passionate belief in what you're doing and why you're doing it. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of, we've talked about your philosophy with your clients, certainly, and, wanting to give them an amazing experience and be in their shoes and understand, but also your team. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so a client experience will only ever be as good as your employee experience. For a client to feel seen and served well, your team have to feel seen and served well. So they are one and the same thing. But let's be clear, we aren't amazing to our people for some pragmatic gain or some productivity. We're amazing to our people because they are humans, and that is the way business should treat humans. It just so happens that when you treat your people beautifully and you really see them and you really care about them, like we talk about love here, but it just so happens that when you do that, you see remarkable business outcomes. But we have to be motivated first and foremost because it is the right thing to do, and that we have a certain belief about the beauty and value of humans and the importance of a workplace. I think that probably sums that up. I think when you talk about my kind of life as a whole, the fact is we don't have a personal life and a work life and a something else life. We don't have a personal self and a home self and a work self. We just have self. We just have one life to live. And actually, it's absolutely exhausting for anyone to have to work out, okay, I'm going to put all my armor on and I need to be this person because I'm about to go into the workplace, and then I can take it all off and be my real self. Just be your real self. Whether that's, and workplaces should get better and better at this, but just be your real self and work out how can you live a flourishing, thriving life. Work is a big part of that. But let's work out how does that actually ensure that you go home as a better parent, you go home as a better partner, you go home, ready to contribute to your community, you go home feeling a sense of security, a sense of self-esteem, a sense of anxiety, lessening, not getting higher because of your work. So I think we've got one life, work's a big part of it. Let's make it amazing for people.
I love that. And I always say that, your business should be something that enables you to have a better life, not tethers you to the business, because, that's why we're doing it. We're creating something that's going to be bigger and better and wonderful, for the people you love, the people around you. And I saw a post you did a couple of days ago, and I absolutely loved it. And there were a good number of photos in there, and you said, yes, this is me, I'm holding a puppy. And then, yes, there's a jumping castle behind me. And I thought, where on earth is she? And then there's a baby. And it was in your office on a Friday night. And there's this gorgeous little girl standing in front of a screen looking at something they were watching. She had a little fairy dress on, and all the kids were lounging around. And I thought, what an amazing place to work.
Yeah, well, look, it's not like that on a Monday morning, let me tell you. But look, that was, again, people are holistic, right? You cannot separate a person from their family, from their whānau, from their important relationships. You just can't separate. It just doesn't work like that. And actually, when we see people, like practically speaking, when we actually have their families in, and then you go, oh, wow, there's Tim, the CFO. Oh, he's holding his child. Oh, that's right. He's a person with a beautiful life. And, that just, it kind of, it breaks down barriers between humans. It makes us see each other really well. And honestly, we just had the most incredible time. Like children whose parents work at tax traders and taxi, they just think it's the best thing ever. They constantly want to come to the office, and we do have them in the office, right? Because when you're a mum and you've just got a new child and you're actually not ready to put that child into daycare, just not ready yet, but you'd like to start work, well, we actually just have the mums and the babies come into the office. We have a nanny who is around, but then, and it's so easy, Jenny, and every time I see something like this, right, every time I see, we have Yenna in at the moment, she's the most beautiful child, she's coming in, and a couple of others, but every time I see her, I'm just like, this is so easy. Why this is so easy. Like, what is it costing us? And what value is it bringing for us to be able to have her mum stay on our team, but also just role model what a business could be like? But that particular night was the end of Wellbeing Month, and we had all the families in to celebrate. And bouncy castle, face painting, hot dogs, big PlayStation for the kind of teenagers, puppies. Somebody made a joke that it looked like I was on the campaign trail kissing all the babies and holding all the puppies, but it was an incredibly joyful occasion. Yeah.
It's pretty special. I know you say it's easy, and in theory it should be easy, but we both know that it doesn't happen very often. What sort of, like, obviously you're a very big company now, you've grown very rapidly. What sort of management structure do you have? Like, how does it work with your, you start a business and you have a couple of people that are critical to everything you do, and then as the company grows, those people ideally grow with you, and they may grow into another role, or they might continue on the same path. But, a lot more experience and skill sets come in, and the structure obviously has to change and morph as you grow. So what's your structure now? How do you manage this growth and this fabulous team?
Such a great question. I'll talk about structure, and then maybe we talk about how you maintain culture and growth. Yeah. So our current structure, so with 48 people on the team, is still very flat.
Are they all, sorry to interrupt, are they all in the same physical location?
We have one in the States and we have one in Switzerland.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and one in Christchurch. So, but actually one in Tauranga. Now I'm remembering where everyone lives. Our beautiful Dan, who lives in Tauranga, he comes up for 3 days a week, and our Christchurch person comes up for a couple of days a week. Mm-hmm. But obviously living in Switzerland and the States, they're not coming over for a couple of days a week. No. Although we wish they would. So in terms of, so 48 people on the team, mostly based in Tamaki Makaurau here in Auckland. So we still have a very flat structure, and we have shared leadership. So there's always been either, Josh and me sharing the leadership of the org, or Tim, who was our CFO, and now we have shared leadership and co-CEO roles as well. So quite flat, shared leadership. We do not have a traditional approach to management. You won't find a manager here, or you won't find anyone speaking about being managed by another person. When a person joins our team, and they know this before they join, they have 4 key people that they're going to relate to. The first is their onboarding guide. That probably is quite self-explanatory. That's your person that, checks in, how's your onboarding going, blah, blah, blah. I mean, onboarding's a whole situation. We could talk about that. Then you have what we call your advocate. This is as close as you're going to find to a manager. This person is responsible for seeing you flourish and grow, and ensuring that you are experiencing deep joy and satisfaction with your work. That is a huge responsibility, and not every, it's an honour to be somebody's advocate here. So you're responsible for that person flourishing, which actually means you're responsible for that person doing great work. And then we have your chapter lead, so that's vocational, that'll be familiar to people. So you have, head of marketing, or head of technology, or head of finance. So you're relating to that person as well. And then you might have a product owner. So if you're working on the taxi product, or if you're working on a couple of our different products there. So there's no kind of hierarchy or typical management structure. If you've got a great idea and you want to come and talk to me about it, everybody's diary is completely transparent. You can pop a time in my diary, often a few weeks out, but I'm available. You don't have to ask anyone. You're not going behind anyone's back to come and kind of talk to me. There aren't any layers there. However, I'd say that to make that work, we're very particular about hiring. We intentionally build a culture of high performance, high trust, and we do have high levels of accountability. People feel deeply accountable, like to themselves, to the team of people that they're working with, whether that's on a product or whether that's in their vocational area. And we have very clear objectives and key results. We use the OKR framework, very clear objectives and key results, which are transparent, that we are wanting to achieve. So there's high levels of trust, high levels of accountability, but very low levels of, if you like, management or micromanagement. The research will tell you that the most common reason that a person will leave a job is because of the relationship with their manager. And even in our structure with the advocate, you as a human, when you land here, we give you an advocate, what we think will work. But after 6 months, you choose your own advocate. Who is the person that's actually going to get the best out of you here, and care for you and see you flourish? So it's there's quite a lot of autonomy involved in our whole setup.
That's a really interesting structure. I haven't heard of anything like that before. It's really interesting. No. Just on the point of culture, because I really want to talk to you about that. I interviewed someone whose offices grew from 9 to 40. So the original founders took it to 9 offices, geographic offices. And then the, professional CEO came in and grew it to 40 offices. It's more than that now. And the interesting thing I found was, when I was asking about culture, because culture was so strong, and you can imagine with original founders just starting a business, the culture would have been quite different to a professional CEO coming in and then taking that business and shaping it and really growing it very strategically. And I asked him about culture, how do you maintain that as you're growing more physically dispersed offices, more people, there's, different ways of working in each of those offices depending upon where they are. And it's a fascinating thing, because it can really shape an organisation's success, I think, which is really what we're talking about this morning, you and I. How do you manage that as you grow the company and grow the team to maintain that really strong culture that you obviously have?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can speak to it in our context, which is kind of New Zealand, and we're not too geographically dispersed. So I'm happy to speak that, but I love the story. I love the sound of that story you were describing. So I'm going to find out more about that. I think that, so yes, when you have 4 people around a table, you don't really need to think about culture or communication or transparency or your values. Well, you should think about your values always, but there's kind of it's easy, it's inherent. So we got to about just 7 people, and that's when we decided, we're going to write everything down. What is our DNA? We wrote that down. We had 7 people. What is our 3-year play? Where are we going for the next 3 years? What's our origin story? What are the foundations that we're built on? So we wrote that down when we only just had 7 people. We call that our 3-year play, and we do that every 3 years. Everybody's in on that, and it's incredibly kind of collaborative. But it leaves no doubt in people's minds what we're built on, where we're going, and what our ways of working are. And all of that. So what we're built on being we call it DNA, but values is another way. Where we're going, which is kind of mission and vision and strategy, and then our ways of working, what they can expect. So that's all written down. I actually have, I've got one. Well, that is actually we have four books like this, and they're absolutely beautifully designed. But it's got everything written down so that there's no wriggle room, and it also provides anyone on the team a platform to actually say, hey, we're saying this, but I'm experiencing something different. So can we have a chat about that? Anyway, so the first thing we did after we had 7 people is we wrote down, who are we? What do we stand for? Where are we going? What does it mean, to work here? So I'm a big fan. I'm a very big fan of writing things down and making them clear for everyone to see. It's a great form of accountability. The second thing is we decided to be intentional about culture, again, just after about 7 people, because, culture is constantly being formed. It's just, do you want to be intentional and considered about that, or do you just want to let it happen? I was like, no, we are going to shape this culture to be a certain way. So I had a kind of a vision of how I wanted the workplace to feel, what I wanted the culture to look and be like. And we started to shape that. We started to spend time in, team professional development, talking about trust. We started with the Lencioni framework, actually, because it was so accessible, and it's such an easy book for people to read if you're dyslexic, or if you don't like reading, whatever your situation is. It's an easy book to kind of understand, or whether you listen to it because it's written like a story. So we started with that, and we spent a couple of years. What does it mean to trust? What does it mean to conflict well? What does it mean to hold each other to account? Where are our weak points? I could tell you what our weak points were. They're in honest conversations and feedback. So we spent another couple of years intentionally focusing on these things. So first of all, write it down. Second of all, just be intentional. It's not just going to happen. You actually have to take time out of what you're doing, which is, building culture is real work, by the way.
Yes, it is.
You got to take time and be intentional about that. And then I think the third thing that all companies do, and Google, one of the world's biggest employers, is a wonderful example of that, is be very particular about how you hire, who you hire, and how you onboard people. And our experience has been, because we are very particular about that, whenever we have a new cohort land, they actually make the culture stronger, because they've arrived with an expectation and they've learnt about it in our onboarding, and actually they make it stronger. Are they the same as everybody else on the team? Absolutely not. I don't want cultural fit. I want different brains. I want different voices. I want different backgrounds on the team, because I want us to keep evolving and keep being different. So I'm not hiring for cultural fit, but they do get a very clear understanding of who we are, what our foundations are, where we're going, and then they add to that and they bring themselves to that, and actually the culture just gets stronger. So the culture is different from it was when it was just, the 2 of us, the 4 of us, the 7 of us, but those important things have stayed the same. So I'm a big fan of writing it down, being intentional and making time for it, and then being very, very particular about onboarding, recruitment and onboarding.
I love what you said before about working on it. And you made reference to, I think you said honest conversations and feedback at some point were a weak point, and you spent a couple of years being very intentional about addressing that. I've never read about anyone doing that. I've never heard anyone say that. And I love it because, you know, you've actually done it. You look at it, you've talked about it, and you've done it. And you've now got this amazing company. And, you know, surely this, I'm sure you've done millions of interviews and talks and all the rest of it, and I know you have. But I think just in your company story alone, you know, there's a business management course in this. There really is, like how to get it right and what not to do. The how to get it right thing. You know, I love the fact that you said you spent a couple of years working on it because it's so important. You know,
Yes.
It really is.
And that's
well
only
done.
because I had experienced how not to do it, because I'd done a terrible job on some of these things, and I regret that. And actually the outcome of not being great at feedback and having honest conversations, that people were hurt. And, you know, that was on me and the culture of the organisation. So I was really determined, actually, I need to get better at this. We need to get better at this. So you do learn your best lessons the hard way.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful offboarding program. So if people, when people, you know, leave, which can be really painful when someone leaves, but I don't want it to be awkward. I want people to feel they can have an honest discussion with their advocate and say, I'm not sure if I still want to be here, but be honest about that and not be punished or pushed to the corner or lose all their good work, and have the freedom to go, you know what, I've thought about it. I do want to be here for another, I want to have another chapter here, or actually I want to leave. But anyway, we have an amazing offboarding program called Your Next Move. And because we have a cool pre-onboarding, which starts 28 days before people land, and that's called Yes to Desk. But we also have one called Your Next Move. The only reason that's so amazing is because we did it poorly once, and I didn't like it. And I said, oh, we've actually kind of stuffed up here. Like, we care about people, because we're people, not because they're just working for us. So actually, we need to reflect that in the way we say goodbye to people and uphold their dignity and their value in that process. And guys, we didn't do that. So that was an opportunity. You learn your best things from your mistakes, right? But, you know, so if we kind of stuff up or do something which we don't feel like reflects our values, we need to pick ourselves up and go, well, let's do this better for the next person, and then do it. So some of our most amazing aspects of our culture or our people experience here, our ways of working, have come out of us not doing a great job the first time.
I love that you said that, because I did want to ask you about your own journey as a co-founder and co-CEO, because, you know, it's a difficult role. If you've never done it before and you haven't got any reference points and you're building a company, you're stepping into something as you grow the business without those reference points. So what have been some of your, I guess, milestone shifts in shifting into that CEO role at a high level?
It's a really good question, and I often say to people, entrepreneurs don't often make great CEOs, and I'm sure you've heard that as well. I think we had the advantage of having two of us co-founders, and both entrepreneurial, both quite good at execution, but in different proportions, right? So so I think that's been helpful to us. I think Josh would never want to be a CEO. That's kind of not in his imagination. It's not in his sweet spot. That skill set probably sits more comfortably with me, just naturally. So that's been really helpful. I think you've got to, again, probably my leadership has been, you know, really based on those core beliefs, actually, about what do we think about people and what do we think about the importance of a workplace. And when I say what do we think about people, I'm talking about our clients as well as our team. And, you know, relationships being at the core of everything we do. So it's probably like a lifetime of, thinking about the world, about your beliefs, about your values, and then really being honest about actually creating, a business in accordance with those. I mean, of course, I've had, great input from people over the years, and had a really great first boss who actually is our lawyer now as an organisation. Which was really lovely. So I think a lot of that input, but probably the best input has been more on a almost philosophical or theoretical point of view about what do we think about people, what do we think about the world, what do we think about the role of business, and then outwork that. And a lot of the things that we're, I guess, well known for. So nothing here came from a 100-page McKinsey report about how to build a great culture. Nothing did that. Also, nothing here is just floating in a vacuum, like, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that. Oh, that's a good idea, let's do that. It comes from like a consolidated kind of foundation and framework. And I think that's been how I've led. And probably recently I've been encouraged that kind of purpose-driven, people-centric way of leading is really the way the world's going. And I think females are by far the best at this kind of leadership, about really being very empathetic, very in tune, very intuitive. I think females are really well placed to lead in that way.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely on that one. Okay, and just let's have a quick chat about Taxi. So you and Josh started Taxi in 2022 and just recently launched it, so in the last couple of years. Has that been an easier startup journey so far than it was for tax traders?
Well, not having newborn babies is definitely helpful. Well, we do have beautiful teenagers. We could have a whole podcast session about the difference between having three little ones and 3 teenagers. They're beautiful, beautiful humans. So wonderful. Look, has it been easier? I think it's just been so drastically different. When we started Tax Traders, it was just us, and it was our family, and it was our vocation. It was everything. And it was dicey, but when we launched Taxi, yes, it's still been very busy and kind of, I guess stressful. I don't really love that word stress, but it's been very kind of exciting like that. But we've had a team around us. We did a successful capital raise at the end of last year, which really is hugely supportive. It's with Simplicity, KiwiSaver provider here. It's not just the money, it's their belief and their support that's been so life-giving to us. So it's been a very different dynamic. What has been difficult is working out how to get a startup going when you've got a successful business over here, which has got established rhythms and rituals. And how do you actually break out of that and get into a completely different headspace where actually mistakes are okay, failure is good, experimentation is excellent. We're not going to get it right the first time. We need to have a few goes. How do you kind of almost have those two mindsets going within the same building? And how do you ensure that we get enough time and attention over here on the new venture? We don't just constantly get dragged back into the default position of the day-to-day of the bigger and, successful, profitable company. So I think that has been quite different.
So how do you manage that?
Well, we did not a great job for the first year or so. Because I'll tell the story about Taxi. So Taxi came out of the 2021 lockdown, and I'm sorry to take everyone back to that very dark place in our lives where we were sharing our offices with children and learning how to do algebra again and all of that kind of terrible things. But 2021 lockdown, we had a Tax Traders client call us. They're a big retailer, an NZX listed company. And they said, hey, we think the 2021 lockdown is going to be very long and hard, and we don't think we're going to be able to trade through. Our bank will not move on our banking facilities, and we're a bit stuck. However, we have just made a $13 million provisional tax payment into the Tax Traders tax pool, and can you help us? And we said, absolutely, we can help you. So what we did is we used the $30 million provisional tax payment that was in the pool as a source of security to access funding and then pass that on to that client at a super, super low rate. So effectively, they got a $30 million injection straight into their bank account. Their tax position at the tax authority remained paid, so they weren't accruing, interest or late payment penalties, and they were able to keep trading and then pay that $30 million back to us over the next 18 months in a way that suited them. This was an outstanding result for them and actually for the country. But as I was sitting there in the 2021 lockdown with, the kids and whatnot, I was like, this is super cool. And I'm so glad that we're in a position to be able to do this. But do you know who really needs this source of working capital? Tax-backed working capital. It's actually every small and medium enterprise in this country that has paid their tax on time, every year. And right now in the lockdown, which is also right now in 2024, they just needed that access to a bit of cash to see them through. But it took, for the big client, it took us 2 days to do the transaction. It took them 2 days. It cost about $30,000 in legal fees. That is just not accessible to any small and medium enterprise. It's accessible to only the very biggest companies who have entire tax teams working on this, and that's because the legislation is so complex. We're working with people's tax, and it's just a very technical area. So in the 2021 lockdown, I was like, this is not good enough. It's not equitable. It's not fair. And so I pitched it to, co-founder husband Josh. I said, Josh, we've got to build something. We've got to do something to bring this particular part of the tax pooling framework to all businesses. And I could kind of see the dashboard in my mind. I could see it. And then we pitched it to Tim, and then we're like, so this was September. And I said, guys, I think we can build it before Christmas. Right? And oh my gosh, I was so wrong on that because it was so much more complicated than that we were expecting in terms of the build itself. But even just to get a different client in mind, this is going to end users, not to accountants. It took us a long time to understand that. So we did this poorly for probably the first year. It was hard to get really good time and really good commitment, and it wasn't pretty. No one was happy. I've got a great story about one of our team members with ASD that I should share with you one day, because he was the one that called it out, and he said, guys, I'm telling you the story. He said, it's on my LinkedIn as well. He said, guys, this is an embarrassment. And I was like, but he was so right. And this is why you should hire people who have neurodiversity, because they'll say the things that no one else wants to say. Anyway, and he was right. So we had to regroup and go, guys, are we going to do this or not? Is this happening or not? Are we going to keep piddling around here making this product, or are we actually going to do it? In the end, the thing that made the difference was what we ended up calling the taxi holiday. So what we did is we created an artificial environment where everybody working on taxi was on holiday, as if they were on annual leave and as if they weren't there. Their out of office was on. They were not available for any questions or Slacks or emails or stand-ups, nothing. They were as if they were on holiday in Fiji, right? Not contactable, not engaged in the tax traders business. But they weren't in Fiji. They were just down the other end of the office, but actually with a physical curtain around them. So that we could kind of create that laser focus, that single focus. And they did quite a bit of prep leading up to that first 2-week sprint so that they were ready and they knew exactly what had to happen. And then for 2 weeks, that is all they worked on. And at the end of that 2 weeks, we're like, okay, we've got it. We know how to work. Even though we're within this organization and we share the culture and the values, we now know how to work with singular laser focus. And they made decisions in terms of how they built the software, how we built our customer success platform that were different from what we were doing at Tax Traders, and to be honest, needed to be different. But having that laser focus, that was the thing that actually ended up working for us, is putting the curtain up. It was a pretty curtain. It all looked very gorgeous, but putting the curtain up, separating them out and saying, hey, for 2 weeks, this is what we're doing. Sole focus.
That's really an amazing story. And did they love that?
I think they loved it. I think there was a sense of, I might miss my friends. I might miss the connection and the culture. But on the whole, so one of our team members has gone back to tax traders, but everyone else on taxi has stayed in taxi. They've built those beautiful relationships and are super, super focused, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. And they absolutely loved it. And we kind of made the area a bit special, so they felt like, I'm coming to work at a new company today.
That's really amazing. And it's great that they've had that opportunity too. Like, they're still there, but they've done this other amazing thing and had the chance to build something brand new, which is wonderful. And you've kept the team.
And they're so proud of the work, and they should be, because Taxi is an incredible product, and it's built absolutely beautifully, much better than I had in my imagination. And just to be really clear, so Taxi now allows every Kiwi business to use their provisional tax, which they have paid, as a source of security to access working capital at rates that are well under half of what a big bank overdraft would cost you. And people might not know, but when you pay your provisional tax, because of the nature of it being provisional, it sits in your My IR account at Inland Revenue doing nothing for up to 18 months. Now, what business owner actually doesn't want to make that money work for them? It's just sitting there doing nothing. It's not earning interest. You can't access that. And in New Zealand alone, we have $18.4 billion sitting idle at Inland Revenue. Now, imagine what happens for a country if you unlock that funding and put it to work. And imagine what happens for a business owner and their mental well-being if they, for a small fee, know they've got access to up to 90% of the amount of provisional tax they have paid. It's for profitable, compliant businesses. Big corporates have been doing this for years. We've just made it available to everyone. And really right now is the moment. This Survive to 25, amazing businesses all around us that just either need a bit of help, or we are also seeing lots of people use taxi to make the most of a growth opportunity. So one of our cool clients is they're a deli business, and obviously we eat all their sandwiches because we're super supportive, so we have to eat all their sandwiches, which is wonderful. And they've got the opportunity to expand into a new supermarket line. They're already at their max of their very modest overdraft. They don't want to go to the bank. They don't want to prepare more forecasts and put their third child on the line and talk through every bit of spending that they do as a company. They don't want to do that. So they've been able to access quite a big chunk of money through taxi, and away they go. So there've been really wonderful examples of companies accessing funding using their provisional tax to either just get through, to balance seasonal trading, or to make the most of an amazing opportunity.
It's a pretty compelling value proposition, that's for sure. It really is.
We think so.
So what's the next big venture ahead of you? Is it going to be something that's going to enable you to scale up beyond the shores of New Zealand?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a big imagination. Like any startup, they never die. What's the saying? They never die from starvation. They die from indigestion. So having too many ideas. Absolutely. We think that we're providing enormous value to business owners and to the country itself. There are different legislative frameworks in different jurisdictions, but we think there's a way we can bring a very similar product to other jurisdictions. It's worth saying that we're really motivated when we see inequity. So when we see something that should be available to all, but is only available to some, the question is, what kind of business solution could solve that? So we are looking at other areas of structural inequity that are outside of tax and thinking, how do we solve them? And then, of course, your other the other area that we are seriously looking at, which is, you've already nodded at that, is, okay, we built some cool people and culture practices here. We built some really cool tools because we couldn't find what we wanted out there, so we built our own. Wonder what other businesses in that kind of tiny size, like 20 employees or even smaller, I wonder if they would find that helpful too. And of course that would be very satisfying for us and very missional, because instead of just having like one great workplace here, we could have more workplaces as we spin up more businesses, but we could also give our stuff away, or make it commonplace that all workplaces would have the tools they need to be amazing for their people.
So your work will continue for many years, being a force for good. It just keeps going on and on, doesn't it?
I think my life's work is to get people to think differently about business.
Yeah.
What is a business? Yeah, I'd love it if in 10, 20, whatever, however many years, when you say, hi, I run a business, instead of people going, business, okay, that's profit, that's greed, that's been awful, people go, oh yeah, I run a business. And they'd think, oh, you care for your people. You provide great solutions to the world.
You're doing something good.
You're doing something good. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to the forward story and watching more of this. It's been fantastic talking to you, Nicola. I know how busy you are. So thank you so much for your time. It's been great.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jenny. I've really loved the conversation. I love the 7% Club and everything you're doing to encourage business owners. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And that's all for today's episode of the 7% Club. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, wherever you are in the world, remember, better strategy, better business, better life.